Welcome back to Act of Kindness, the place where true life stories and powerful lessons come alive to inspire your heart and open your eyes to the hidden strength inside ordinary people. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and stay with us, because today's story is one that will stop you in your tracks. The story begins on a quiet morning in a small coffee shop tucked away in a busy downtown neighborhood. The sun was barely rising, spilling soft golden light through the big front windows. The smell of roasted beans lingered in the air, and the hum of early traffic outside seemed far away compared to the calm warmth inside. At first glance, there was nothing unusual happening. Customers trickled in, ordering their lattes, cappuccinos, or black coffee before rushing off to work. The baristas moved quickly behind the counter, their voices mingling with the hiss of the espresso machine. But on this particular morning, among the ordinary faces and routines, something extraordinary was about to unfold. A tall man in a simple gray hoodie and dark jeans walked in quietly. To anyone else, he looked like just another customer. His clothes were plain, his shoes were worn, and nothing about him screamed wealth or power. But in reality, this man was one of the richest individuals in the city, a billionaire who had chosen to live undercover for a while to test not just himself, but also the world around him. This billionaire, let's call him David, had grown tired of people treating him differently because of his status. He wanted to know how people behaved when they didn't know who he was. More importantly, he wanted to see if kindness and integrity still existed in unexpected corners of life. David stepped up to the counter, scanning the menu like he was unfamiliar with it. His eyes landed on a young black waitress behind the counter. Her name was Maya. She had been working at the cafe for over 2 years, balancing the job with night classes and caring for her younger brother. Life hadn't been easy for her, but she carried herself with quiet strength. "Good morning," Maya said with a polite smile. "What can I get started for you today?" David looked at her, noticing the warmth in her voice. "Just a black coffee, please," he answered. As she rang up his order, Maya couldn't help but notice something about him. His face seemed vaguely familiar, though she couldn't quite place where she'd seen him before. There was a sharpness in his eyes, a depth that told her this wasn't just any regular man coming in for his morning coffee. Still, she treated him like any other customer, polite and respectful. While waiting for his order, David stood quietly, observing the cafe. He noticed how Maya interacted with every single customer. She spoke kindly to the elderly woman who struggled to hear, bent down to smile at a little boy clutching his mother's hand, and even handled the impatient businessman barking about being late with calm professionalism. It struck David how much grace this young woman carried in such an ordinary setting. But what he didn't know was that Maya was also facing something heavy that very morning. She had recently received some troubling news about her brother. He had fallen in with the wrong crowd, and if she couldn't find a way to pull him out, his future would be in serious danger. When David's coffee was finally ready, Maya set the cup on the counter, but her hand lingered. In that moment, a decision formed inside her, one she couldn't explain but felt deeply compelled to act on. She quickly grabbed a small piece of paper, scribbled something down, and slid it discreetly under the cup toward him. David, surprised, looked up at her. She gave the smallest nod, her eyes telling him to read it later. Without saying a word, he took the coffee, picked up the note, and walked out of the shop. Out on the sidewalk, with the noise of the city around him, David unfolded the note. The words written inside were simple, but they shook him to his core. It read, "I know who you are. Please don't leave without hearing me out. It's not about money, it's about something far more important." David froze. He had been so careful with his disguise. No one was supposed to know that he was the billionaire hiding in plain sight. For a waitress in a small cafe to see through him felt impossible. But the note wasn't asking for money, fame, or favors. It was asking him to listen. Curiosity mixed with caution, David turned back into the cafe. He walked up to Maya, and she leaned in just slightly, her voice low. "Meet me after my shift. There's something I need to tell you." The entire day, David couldn't shake the anticipation. What could this waitress possibly know about him? Why did she want to talk? He wasn't used to being the one left in suspense. But something about her sincerity kept him from walking away. When the clock finally struck 2 and her shift ended, Maya removed her apron and stepped outside, where David was waiting by the corner. They walked together down the block, away from the noise, and sat on a bench in a small park. Maya took a deep breath. "You probably think I'm crazy for writing that note," she began. "But I recognized you the moment you walked in. I've seen you before, not in person, but in the news. You keep a low profile, but I know you're not just some man ordering coffee." David studied her face carefully. She wasn't lying. There was no greed in her expression, no scheming look that he had seen so many times from people who wanted to use him. Instead, there was urgency, almost desperation. "Why did you call me out then?" he asked. "Why not just let it go?" Maya hesitated, then said, "Because I need your help. Not money, not a handout. Guidance. My younger brother is 17. He's smart, but he's making bad choices. I've tried everything, but he doesn't listen to me anymore. He listens to people who flash wealth and status. He needs a real example of success, someone who can show him what real strength and discipline look like. I can't think of anyone else who could reach him. But you could." Her voice cracked slightly, but she quickly composed herself. For a moment, David was speechless. In all his years of being approached by people, it was always about financial help, business deals, or favors. But this young woman wasn't asking for any of that. She was asking for his time, his wisdom, his mentorship, for her brother's future. David felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. The note had stopped him cold because it wasn't about him at all, it was about purpose. "I don't usually do this," he said finally. "But I believe you. Tell me more about your brother." That afternoon turned into hours of conversation. Maya told him everything. How their parents had passed away, how she had been raising her brother on her own, how she worked day and night to keep them afloat. She admitted her fears of losing him to the streets, to bad influences that promised quick money but led only to destruction. David listened, truly listened, and by the end of it, he made her a promise. "I'll meet him. I'll talk to him. But I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. If he wants to hear the truth, I'll give it to him." The following week, David sat down with Maya's brother, Jamal. At first, the teenager was skeptical. Why would this stranger care? But as the conversation unfolded, Jamal realized this man wasn't like the flashy hustlers he admired. David spoke about discipline, about building something real, about patience and integrity. He shared his own struggles, the nights he went hungry before he became wealthy, the betrayals he endured, and the lessons he carried. It was the kind of conversation Jamal had never had before. And for the first time in a long time, he listened. Weeks turned into months, and with David's quiet mentorship and Maya's unwavering support, Jamal began to change. He left behind the bad influences, started focusing on school, and even got a part-time job. As for Maya, she continued working at the cafe, but her life felt lighter. She had done something brave by slipping that note, and it had paid off in a way she never imagined. David kept in touch, not just with Jamal but with Maya too, respecting her strength and determination. And David, he walked away from the experience humbled. The billionaire who thought he was undercover to test the world ended up being tested himself. He discovered that sometimes the greatest acts of kindness don't come from money or status but from a handwritten note, a sister's love, and the courage to ask for help the right way. So, the next time you see someone who looks ordinary, remember this story. You never know who they really are, what they're carrying, or how one small act, like slipping a note, can change everything. Thank you for watching Act of Kindness, where we share stories that remind us of the power of compassion and courage in everyday life. If this story touched you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And remember, kindness is never wasted, it always comes back in ways you can't imagine.